welcome everyone to the inaugural NgEX Diaspora virtual speaker series. We're having Chinedu Echeruo with us today. Thank you everyone for joining. Chinedu is actually on the call already, and we're just going to go ahead and have a quick video from Mrs. Abike Dabiri, the chairman of the Nigerian Diaspora Commission that's supporting this program. We're glad to have them support us. So we'll hear from her just before we start hearing from Chinedu. So just some quick housekeeping. When we're sharing the video, you can tap on the video to expand the video to fill up your screen. This webinar is being broadcasted live on Facebook as well. So if you have friends that want to join via Facebook, feel free to let them know about that. Just a quick intro on to Chinedu. Like we all know, Chinedu is a Nigerian-born entrepreneur, or a serial entrepreneur. Is currently the co-founder of the Love and Magic Company, a startup studio that helps entrepreneurs and organizations bring their ideas to life. So we'll be hearing a lot from Chinedu about how to bring your ideas and business to life with minimal stress. I think what Chinedu is most known for is the company he founded in 2005, the travel app called HopStop, that helps millions of people navigate public transportation in major metro areas around the world. Apple bought HopStop in 2013 and incorporated most of the features of HopStop into Apple Maps. But Chinedu is a serial entrepreneur. He's also the co-founder of the startup Alchemy, and it's they offer a 6-week online masterclass that walks you through every single step of the process of launching your product using a scientific process, so you never feel overwhelmed, lost, or stuck. Yeah. Chinedu has also been named one of the 10 most powerful people in Africa by Forbes magazine, Black Enterprise magazine's Small Business Innovator of the Year, listed in Black Enterprise's Top 40 Under 40. He's also been featured in various publications, including Bloomberg, Fortune, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNBC, and more. So we heard a lot from Chinedu today. Take us through his journey from Nigeria to the US to getting to the point where he founded a couple of companies in the US. He'll also talk to us about how to run a successful business and his background, running those businesses. And then finally, we'll talk to us about how his company actually helps other individuals and companies bring their ideas and products to life. So stay tuned. We'll just play a quick video and then we'll jump in to have Chinedu speak to us. Can we please go ahead?
Hello everyone, my name is Abike Dabiri, Chairman, Nigerian Diaspora Commission. The Nigerian Diaspora Commission is a one-stop agency created by the federal government of Nigeria to engage Nigerians in the diaspora in the policies and programs of the federal government of Nigeria. I welcome you to the very first in our Diaspora Lecture Series, virtual lecture series in partnership with NgEX, featuring for the very first time our own Chinedu Echeruo. Now the idea is that wherever you are in the world, we want to engage, talk with you, and have a conversation. So as we welcome Chinedu Echeruo to this program today, of course you know Chinedu. Chinedu is a very successful serial entrepreneur. He's been named as one of Forbes' 10 most powerful Africans in the world. He's won a lot of awards from everywhere in the world, and Chinedu will be joining us today in this conversation to engage with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, I hope you join us on this program so that we can together work to build a Nigeria of our dreams. So this will be the first in the series, and hopefully there will be many more on a regular basis. So let's engage one another. Let's talk to one another. Let's join us together, Nigerians in the diaspora and Nigerians at home, to build a country of our dreams. We count on you, we look up to you, and the Nigerian Diaspora Commission looks forward to working with all Nigerians in the diaspora. Welcome.
Okay. Yes, so there we go. Welcome, Chinedu.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess now we have you on finally. So I guess we'll start off with, telling us about your journey from, I guess, King's College, right? You're an alumnus of King's College, and how you
Yeah.
walked from King's College all the way down, or even, before that, all the way down to the US and to Wall Street, and then to founding your companies.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for all of you who are joining the call from is it Facebook, Zoom, wherever. But thank you for taking the time to join the conversation. So, and Obi, thank you for inviting me and putting all the work that it took to make this this event happen. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now the story, yeah, the story. I remember driving like 5 hours. Well, I wasn't actually driving because I was too young, but you know how in Nigeria the drivers take you from the east to boarding school in King's College, you know. So I had packed my bags, all the provisions and all that. So that was like my first, real journey into the unknown, into King's College, which is obviously based in Lagos. But it's through all variety of reasons. My dad ended up having to move to the U.S. So we got an opportunity to move to the U.S. Because he was a professor. So we jumped with him from university to university, and I really basically ended up at Syracuse. And then from Syracuse, then through a variety of coincidences and interests, it just really led me to tech. But I'll give you the details as we talk. But I didn't start off in tech. I started off in finance. I majored in finance and accounting. Because my mother, when I was thinking about what to major in, she was like, "Listen, Chinedu, accountants always have jobs." And she said I should be an accountant. But there's something about finance and creativity that I thought was more of my interest. So I did a joint major in finance and accounting at Syracuse, which is where my dad ended up teaching. So anyway, that's how I got into Wall Street. I did finance, J.P. Morgan, Goldman, did M&A, did the traditional kind of investment banking route before I ended up in business school, then started another company. But and then let me ask me more questions. I can give you more details as we go.
Right. So, so you ended up at Syracuse, you've gone to Wall Street. I mean, how did your first idea come up? I know you started a company before you did HopStop, right? So how did you move from finance to tech? What was the inspiration to?
Yeah, okay, so I'll tell you, I actually remember because it was, I actually found the old business plan I had actually printed out. So this was 1995, 96, right? So the internet was just about, beginning. Jeff Bezos had just launched Amazon. It was just really fresh time. And for me, I was thinking like, wow, this web, this internet thing is probably going to change the way people find jobs, right? Change the way recruiters, how people get jobs. And I was thinking, so I remember I actually just put up the business plan just a few days ago, but the company was called IPO Me, which is like this, I know it's not a very good name, but the whole idea was to like go public, get yourself out there, find a new career, find a new job. But I wrote the business plan. I didn't do much with it because I think I was facing the same challenges I think many of the people on this call are probably facing, which is I have the idea, but I don't even, I don't know how to code. I don't know how to develop. How am I going to launch my app or my site? So I was faced in a very similar situation. So even though I had written the business plan, I just printed it out and I put it in my drawer because I didn't know how to build it, right? Because I wasn't a developer. But the wonderful things has happened since then, right? There are all these new ways for entrepreneurs to find people who can help them build their concept. And the company I found was a company called Elance. Now it's called Upwork. but I finally found a way for me to engage with developers and work with them to turn my idea into a product or into a company. So that's probably the most significant, probably the first piece of advice I'll share regarding this whole process is don't feel like you're limited by your ability to code. You know, there's so many marketplaces out there that can help you find developers, you know, designers. And another great site is Fiverr, I think is VVER. So that's a great place to find developers, designers, all kinds of talent that can help you turn your idea into a company. Anyway, so that was the very first idea initially. It's okay, let's use technology to help people find jobs. So
okay, so I mean, to continue on that, so going from, you know, IPO me onto the next one, and then getting to HopStop, and then actually what was attractive to Apple, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you how the whole HopStop thing happened. So I've always been bad with directions, always getting around, always getting lost from, you know, like always, like between streets and houses, anything, I'm always getting lost. But so it was always been a problem. And I remember going on, using the subway to go on a date or meet a friend of mine somewhere in the Lower East Side in New York. And I remember getting lost. Then I just made in my mind a decision. It's like, I'm going to actually attempt to figure out how to solve this problem. So what I did is like went to the subway station, put up a map, laid it on the floor of the subway of my apartment, and said, okay, how would I describe the transit system to a developer to help me fix it? So I used Excel because that was the only tool I could use as a banker. Then I sent it to Elance, the site I just mentioned. And through some miraculous fate, I actually found a genius developer who really was the genius behind the technology of HopStop. So he ended up moving from Russia, where he was based, moved to New York. So then when he joined New York, the funny thing, he had the motherboard of where HopStop was hosted. And we were so frugal that we didn't even have a case for the motherboard. So it was literally, the whole site was sitting on a motherboard. So he brought it into, Alex brought it into the office at HopStop when he moved from Russia to New York. So he went from Russia to New York, and when Apple bought the company, he then joined Apple in Cupertino. So that's the age we live in now. And, you know, we shouldn't think like we're limited by the friends we know or the people in our city or in our state. You know, we're now in a global game, so you can work from people from all over the world, you know, to get your project up and going. So that's a brief HopStop story. But for me, as an entrepreneur, I realized like my true passion is in the early stages of entrepreneurship. So when I felt that I wasn't the right person to continue leading HopStop, I had a conversation with my board and said I thought it made sense for to recruit a new seed to take over from me. So after discussions with the board, we found a really excellent CEO, Joe Meyer, who came on to run HopStop after I left to do private equity in Nigeria and Ghana. So that's the sort of the side story for the kind of the HopStop story.
Okay, so I mean, like everybody knows, you know, Apple acquired HopStop. So what was the key attraction, and what was that process like? I mean, you know, a small company being sought after by a larger company, and what was that process like, and what did it take, you know, for you and your team to be ready in the negotiations and closing the deal?
Yeah. So so first of all, I have no special knowledge about proceedings or how they thought about the acquisition. So, but just looking back now, sometimes good news can come in the shape of bad news, and bad news can come in the shape of good news. So when HopStop really sort of was the leader in the transit space. Then we had just one competitor, and fortunately or unfortunately for us, the number one competitor was Google. So you're a young company, then all of a sudden you find that your number one competitor is Google, right? I think I think, again, who knows, but I think there's sometimes it might have been as a way for Apple to improve the utility of its own maps, right, by adding similar functionality as Google Transit had. And obviously they were Apple was also going through an interesting phase in upgrading their mapping solution as well. So, you know, I can't say specifically what happened, but I think it was something that helped them, I think, improve their mapping product.
Okay. And so after HopStop, you just mentioned that you moved into private equity in Nigeria and Ghana. You still doing that, and what kind of opportunities do you look for?
Yeah, so no, so I no longer do that, but what I found though was actually the seeds of I think one of the things we're working on now. So what I found, there are so many entrepreneurs who had all these ideas, you know, they wanted to, one, for example, was this entrepreneur in Kumasi, which is in the middle part of Ghana. And he had all these ideas of creating a soy processing company, but he didn't really have the knowledge. He didn't really understand the working capital, the right manufacturing processes, marketing, distribution. He didn't really have enough information. Then I started thinking like, well, what if we could change the way we inspire entrepreneurs or empower entrepreneurs by literally giving them much of the information they need to get going. So instead of us sending NGOs and experts, why don't we give them all the information? Why can't we have one place where you can find, you know, obviously you can't get 100% of it, but why can't we get 80% of all the information you need to start a small business especially in emerging markets where knowledge is very scarce, you know? So, and I did a TEDx talk for anyone who's interested in learning more about that concept. But the funny thing is when I came back to the US, after the Apple purchase, I realized that the entrepreneurship in technology in the US is very similar to the challenges that the Kofi in Ghana had. You know, you have an idea, but like you don't know where to go, who has the money, how do I raise it, how do I build it, how do I hire people? So in many ways, my experience doing private equity in Nigeria and Ghana, seeing how hard it is for an entrepreneur to really start with a concept, right, and deliver a business, that was a really good lesson. I think now I look at what we're doing here in the US in a very similar light. What if we could create a better process for entrepreneurs, you know, to solve the problems that they want to solve? So, but I did that for 4 years. Then I came back to the US.
Okay. So, being a Nigerian immigrant, I mean, what's your experience been? I mean, how do you see your journey from Nigeria to the US and, you know, going through school and then Wall Street and all that? How do you see being an immigrant in here? How do you think it affected your ability to succeed or face more challenges than normal, or just operate generally in the Western world?
Wow. Do you know, I've never really thought of myself as an immigrant. Yeah. Yeah, I've never. Yeah, I can't even remember thinking that way. Like, yeah, no, I think like we're past the days of labels, you know?
Okay.
Like, you know, I think there's so, like, human beings can create so many things, and like the labels we've had are just the old labels, right? Like the world has changed so much. People are doing so many things in so many ways. So I've never, I can't even understand that question, really, to be honest.
Okay. So, we had a couple of questions, actually a lot of questions that were submitted before the event started. So I'll just throw in those questions while we go along, right? So one of them is, how did you build your network, right, and mentors in the tech industry?
That's something that I won't say I've done well at all. Actually, I would give myself a C with networking. I mean, yes, but I mean, LinkedIn is obviously a wonderful way to engage with, especially a professional crowd. So I've been doing more LinkedIn and just sharing some of our knowledge via LinkedIn. So for me, that's the work I need to do. Just really network more and share information more, engage with people more. So I wouldn't be a good person to get advice for doing that. But the grander advice is just help people and share your information and I think that's just in general. I think that's a good just a way to be.
Okay, and then let's see. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing. I think let's talk a little bit about what you're currently doing. You're offering this online masterclass. We have a few people that are interested in learning more about it, so
Okay.
give you a chance to talk about that.
Okay, so well, when I came back to the U.S., I was really at the point where I was really trying to think about, well, what's the whole point of this whole life thing, like what is my long-term vision of what I want to do with my life, what I want to do. Then the idea that there's no limits to what you can think, right? So I'm saying if that's true, then what's the grandest, what's the most epic story of life I could design, I could make up and aspire to. And that's really just what led me to Love and Magic Company. It's like, what if we could use all our creative capacities, right? All this knowledge, all this information we have in this world, right? And applying it so that we can create abundance. Like, imagine if that was a thing, right? Imagine if we really looked at how does goodness, how do we create, right? How do we, how does that happen? Because it seems to me that if we truly understood that, then the kinds of poverty and scarcity we see in the world would go away. So many people have so many wonderful ideas, so many ways, so many things they want to create, but they're frustrated, They're frustrated with the know-how, Like, how does it happen? Like, where does the money come from? How do I build it, There's so much. So what we wanted to do with Love and Magic Company was to, first of all, inspire the imagination, inspire people in really understanding what their imagination is and how powerful and how valuable their contributions can be, one. Then how can we then build things that can help them express those ideas, right, in a constructive way? Like, how do we help people build constructive things that help human life, because I think that's kind of what we're supposed to do. So that's really the backstory of Love and Magic, right? So let's create a companies that's our goal, that's our mission, that's right. So that's it's through the challenges of building our own companies that we really understood that it's hard. It's really difficult to build a company from scratch, right? It's difficult to go from I have an idea to it's working, customers are coming, it's growing, I'm hiring people, I'm raising money, I'm successful. And it's through our own frustrations and our own challenges of figuring out how to build companies from scratch, how to build constructive organizations. Did we go back and say, okay, let's understand it. Like, let's understand it like a scientist understands a process. Like, let's truly understand it. And that's what led to the school, to the startup school of alchemy. So now that we understand the structure of it, okay, now let's share it with entrepreneurs who are facing the same challenges of, I have an idea, but okay, now what's the next step? So that's a concept between Love and Magic and then the startup school of alchemy.
Okay, so let's go back and talk a little bit about your experience as well. Raising money. We've got a lot of questions around how did you raise money. So I know you've done a few raises. So what would you consider to be key factors for an entrepreneur to consider and have around them if they're trying to go out and raise money?
Yeah, so I think the one thing is to think of everyone as your beloved, right? So, I use the word beloved because I want people to really get into what they're doing, right? So if you have a customer, call them your beloved customers, right? And if you have investors, call them your beloved investors, right? Or beloved potential investors, right? So if you thought of them as your beloved potential investors, right? What would you want to give them, right? So if you start there, right? So you want to give them good news, right? You want to give them progress. You want to give them a chance to be part of your story. You want them to give them terms that are fair or as attractive to them as investors, right? That's what you're trying to do if you really wanted to, align yourself to their success, right? So then you then have to back into, well, what is it that I need to show, prove, demonstrate, build that can give the same information to your investors, right? Because their investors are just like you listen to facts, listen to opinions, you make a decision based on the information you have, right? So if you're looking for investors, then understand what investors want, right? So do they want traction? Do they want to show that you built it? Do they show that you can build it? Do they show you're committed? What exactly are they looking for? And you can't guess. Sometimes you have to interact with investors to see what they're looking for. But just like you design for your customers, you should also be designing for the investors. What are they looking from you to build? Are they looking for the prototype? Are they looking for a particular metric, for example? For example, if you're in a SaaS business, for example, people might be looking for your monthly recurring revenue, for example. That could be a metric that's key to whether the investors will be interested in your company or not. So it's about, not just hoping that will happen, but just saying, well, if I was in their shoe, right, what would I want, right? If then reverse engineering it to then deliver it as a presentation to the investors, etc. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you find your first investors? Was it family, friends?
Yeah, so it was, so for me, I wasn't connected to the VC community. I wasn't connected to even a large group of entrepreneurs. So I was in this entrepreneurs conference, I was sitting by myself. I had printed the flyers for HopStop, but I'm not sure how many people picked them up. I was just waiting there, just wondering what I had done with my life, sitting here by myself with these flyers. But this guy walked over and he started talking to me about what HopStop did. We chatted, we exchanged business cards, and I think he took one of the flyers. And over the weekend, I got a text or call from him asking me to come to New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, to present to some members of his team. My first reaction was, oh, I have to HopStop didn't work for New Jersey. I'm not sure if I should figure. I even know how to get to Newark from New York City, but I'm glad I went. But that was the journey because we had literally run out of money by then. And so the group after my presentation says we want to invest in HopStop. I said, okay, that's wonderful. And they're like, okay, well, it'll take us probably 3 months to sign the papers and get all the legal documents. It's like, well, HopStop won't be around in 3 months. It was that tough, So what they did was they actually wrote me a $50,000 check, just like $50,000, just so that I could pay the hosting for 3 months before we closed the initial round of financing for HopStop. So that's just one of many, on the very when you think everything is gone or everything is lost, something just happens that just changes the situation. there are many times where I've had to just start running, not because I was particularly wanted to get healthy. It's just I wanted my mind. I just needed to work off the stress for like how I would figure out the payroll, at some point. But I think that's just the entrepreneurial journey, ups and downs, nearly dying and going forward,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in light of that, so one interesting question that came in is, it's when you think about the ups and downs that entrepreneurs have to deal with, right? What are some personal finance tips that you would offer to entrepreneurs? I think at the entrepreneurial journey, you have to manage the finances of the business.
Yeah.
You also have to manage your own finances.
Yeah. Save as much as you can. Just have a modest life. And especially if your aspiration is to be an entrepreneur, what you want to do is you want to, it's called ruin risk, so to speak. Not that I really believe in ruin, but you want to have enough buffer, right, between you and 6 months, 1 year, 18 months of savings, so that because things may not work out exactly as you planned, right? So to be able to, if not have it saved, but have maybe contingencies, right, to help you weather through the journey of entrepreneurship is probably a good idea. But you'd be surprised what you could get away with if you truly had to. You could live really lean if you had to.
Okay. So I guess another question, there's some tips for tech entrepreneurs in general. There's a lot of questions around tech entrepreneurship. So with your experiences going through these companies, what do you think are the qualities and attributes that the average tech entrepreneur should bring to the table?
Okay. So let me just share. Maybe this will be a good time for me to sort of start sharing how, just given what we've learned, going, knocking our heads, really trying to understand what this game, this hustle, this process is, right? So fundamentally, I think at least the way we look at it now is entrepreneurs should really think about their work, their product as making the stories of somebody else come true, right? Just hear me out. So everyone on this call listening right now has a vision, right? There's something that they see, some possibility that intrigues them, right? They wonder, like I've always wanted to do this app, some app, or I want to build a company like this. They have it in their heads, right? Or they want to have a good education for their children, right? Or they have stories in their heads that they will actually want to come true, right? We all do. So, but imagine if there are people whose job was it to make those stories come true, right? So imagine if there's someone trying to help you leave corporate America and start a company, right? That was their job. That was their focus, right? You would, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, you'd be very interested because the person is solving a problem. You're having a story you want to have come true. So it's clear just by looking at that is if you can make someone's story come true, you have them as a customer, right? They will buy from you, because you're making their story come true, right? So if you look at it through that lens, then it just allows you to really stop thinking tech, non-tech, it doesn't matter, right? All you're trying to do is, can I understand the stories of my beloved customers? Can I understand it? What are they aspiring to? What frustrates them? What do they want to have a house in the village by 2022? Do they want to have lower healthcare costs, right? Do they want to have lower freights shipping between Uganda and South Africa? What is their story? What is their aspiration? And if you can then say, look, how do I design a product that can make that aspiration come true? Right? That is product development. That is entrepreneurship, right? So McDonald's, for example, has designed a set of operations that makes the story of having a fresh, fast burger come true, right? They've designed the processes that deliver that story. And every time you pass McDonald's and you're hungry, right, you can go to McDonald's because they've delivered it. So us as entrepreneurs, that's what we should be doing. What are the aspirations of our beloved customers? So Uber, right? I have an aspiration to get to a location on time without having to stand out in the rain, right, in New York City, right? And Uber makes it come true, right? So the idea is, if you really start remove yourself from this decision, right, and focus on your customer and say, what are their aspirations? What are they trying to accomplish? What is success for them? Once you understand that, then product development and entrepreneurship becomes very logical after that, because you understand what's really driving your customers. That distinction I'm making now is the real distinction between people who solve what people call the product market fits. People who can understand product market, people who solve this problem I just mentioned. The difference between a product that makes their stories come true, or the product that's what's in your head. That difference is really the difference between a product market fit and people who are challenged in finding a product that really moves in the marketplace. So, yeah.
Okay, so writing on that, and then going back to your experience with starting HopStop, right? So you talked about having the product that solves people's problems, right?
Yeah.
So when you founded HopStop, that solved your own problem. Well, how did you? And most of the time they'll tell you, you've got to have a problem, and it's got to be a big enough problem, right? But you started HopStop, basically to solve your own problem. And when did you realize that it was a big enough problem, or how did you realize it was a big enough problem for you to put, jumping with both feet and actually run with it?
Oh, just to be clear, I never built HopStop to solve my own problem, so to speak. That was a bit too much effort. It was just for me. So I did want to build a company that would solve that other people would use, to solve that problem of getting around. But it wasn't. I wouldn't have put that much effort for it. It was just me solving my own problem. But I think that speaks to because it was really organic. Lots of people, we didn't grow through viral loops or marketing. It was really a very organic growth, right? And it's because it made some story come true of our customers. So in the case of HopStop, people wanted to make the story of them arriving on time without getting lost come true, right? And that's what HopStop delivered. It delivered that promise of we'll give you step-by-step direction to get you to your place on time, remove the anxiety from the customer journey, etc. So I just found that looking at it this way is just a great way for the entrepreneurs on this call to really remove the things that are their own, the desire for them to create something versus the desire of helping solve a problem. It's a very, tricky. It's very easy to think you've built a product versus building a solution. So if you really say is for my customers, for the rest, like whatever your line of entrepreneurship is, what is the story that your beloved customers are facing? Then how does your product make those things happen, right? If you can really answer that question, it would remove much of the question. Obviously now the question is, from terms of the market size, how many people have this problem, right? So once you identify, once you identify the pain, then you also have to think about, well, how many people have this problem now, and then how are there related problems that you can also solve, right? So sometimes you can enter a market and do one small piece, but then eventually do more. So it's hard to answer specifically, but the idea is you want obviously a growing market, as everyone has talked about, and you want a market where, for whatever reason, you can build some sort of competitive advantage over time, essentially. But obviously, it'll depend on what kind of entrepreneurship you're doing.
Okay. So I guess, there's the majority of the folks in here, from the tech world, we're talking about tech, right? But in general, right, today, where do you see good opportunity for someone who's thinking about starting a business, just in general in the business
Yeah.
world? Where would you recommend people look and how should they look?
Yeah, I think AI and blockchain technologies are going to be the future of how many of these platforms. Every company in the future is going to be an AI company, every single one. So, but the wave of AI hasn't yet hit in a way that really, I mean, it's hidden now, but every single industry is going to be AI is going to play a role in it, right? To acquire the knowledge about AI, understand what it is, its implications for your business, implications for you to use those technologies to create value in other markets, for me is a very compelling one. The same thing with blockchain. Blockchain, there's probably more high level risk associated with the outcomes. But one surefire way of creating value over the next 5 years is to become an expert in what AI is and position yourself through either being an entrepreneur, taking these technologies and applying it to a problem area, or joining a company that's building these capacities.
Okay. So just pull out another question. It says, what should an enterprise and founder consider before selling a company?
I mean, that's a very complicated question. So I mean, I think it's a question of what else could you do? I mean, if you're in a position to sell your company, the question is, well, what's your alternatives, right? And then wait, given your alternatives. Obviously, there are questions around the products, right? Will it live? Like, are you emotionally attached to the brand? Do you want it to continue having life after you live? So those are considerations potentially in your negotiations with the purchaser. So can you negotiate terms that are suitable to you? But it's hard for me really to answer that question without having more detail.
Okay. Okay. So I guess at this point, what advice would you give your 16-year-old self if you were to go back in time and talk to yourself?
So I remember growing up in Nigeria and just thinking like, this is actually when we just moved from Nigeria to the US for the first time when I was 16. And you almost feel like some people have knowledge that you don't, for some reason. It's just like, you just feel like, especially growing up, as a young person, you just feel like adults, just for whatever reason, are endowed with so much more knowledge. But what's clear to me now is like, there's nothing that someone else knows that you can't also effectively know, right? And if that's true, then like, what's stopping us, right? There's nothing that should stop anyone from being able to dream any kind of thought, because you can create it, right? And I think when I was 16, I think that I still had lots of different ideas that I don't think were as empowering as I see the world now. On YouTube alone, you can type in anything you want, any piece of knowledge you're seeking in life. In fact, any problem you have, just go to YouTube and type it in there. You'd be surprised what will come from it, right? So, so obviously I don't know how big the internet was when I was 16, but the idea of we're all empowered, and the only thing that doesn't allow us to see it is because of some belief that isn't true, but we haven't tested in a long time. So I would say is like, you can create much more than you think, right? You can create, like, the limits of your creation is so unbound. So that's what I would tell him. I would tell him, like, listen, you should start earlier. You shouldn't wait to go to become legit by going to, I could have started creating at an earlier age. And I hope more entrepreneurs start creating at an earlier age as well.
Okay, so interesting that you mentioned that. One other question came in was, how do you overcome imposter syndrome?
I don't know. I'm still practicing. I'm still practicing how to do that. I think the idea is life isn't easy. I think that's just the truth. Like everything that's worth having will require us to be somebody we haven't been, right? It's just the truth, right? It's like we have to be someone we haven't been to be, to get somewhere where we're not. And I face those challenges as well as I think about the new ways of how we're presenting our information, the new ways we're talking about creation. But the truth is, there's no way you can go from where you are to where you want to be without risking that. You just have to risk your own change, right? But as long as you know that this is something that's true to you, truly true to you, right? Then if you're brave enough, then what people think, it's easier, if you can really find something that really resonates, an identity that you think is worth feeling an imposter about, because there's no one who is 100%. Well, as long as you're striving, right, you'll always feel uncomfortable. You'll feel like, oh, I'm not yet ready for this opportunity, but you are. It's just a process, So that's what I would say. It's not real. If you see it clearly, then there's a path to it, right? If you see something clearly, there's a path to it, right? And you just have to take the time to walk the ladders to the thing you're trying to get to.
Okay, so I would think a lot of folks on here, like you mentioned, are interested in entrepreneurship and all that. So what would be your advice in terms of how an entrepreneur, especially a Nigerian, should take that journey, right? A Nigerian living in the US, from idea all the way to having a successful business and then probably having a successful exit as well.
Sure. So for anyone who's interested, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And on my profile, I published a step-by-step process of how to turn from idea to a startup. 62 steps. I'll probably expand it over time, but I think that is something that's very practical, that you can take to say, okay, how do I go from the very first step is write your idea down. So it starts from there. Then I try to walk you through a step-by-step process to remove some of the confusing and sometimes some of the waste of energy and time that entrepreneurs have to go through sometimes. I always go with, I believe in just having certain kind of affirmations in terms of what you believe in and what you do. And I think mine is, I help millions of entrepreneurs make their stories come true, right? So just like I was telling you about how your job as an entrepreneur is to make the life of some other human being better because of your work, right? If we all did that, we would all be solving our own problems. And for me, I think that's a successful life, right? It's helping other people solve their own problems. So I'm very interested in this particular journey. So if you go to, and you can download the MVP process on my LinkedIn page. So that's one. Then the Startup School of Alchemy, which I just mentioned, is a place where you can go and sign up if you're interested in the masterclass, where we'll go through step by step these steps in this process. But if you're not, if you can't do it this time, you can go to my LinkedIn and download the 62 steps. Okay, so I'll share with you what. Since I don't have obviously enough time to go in detail, I'll give you the 4 big sections of that process. Okay. The first process is you have to really understand the unmet needs of your customers. You know, people say that all the time, but it's very fundamental, right? So what is their story? What are their aspirations? How are they doing it now? And then how can you make it better, right? And you do that by talking to customers, right? Not just sitting in your room and dreaming up a business plan, by truly having empathy for your customers and talking to them and truly understand what can make their life better, right? So that's step one. And step two is once you have that, then you have to then say, well, am I capturing it right? Have I heard them correctly, right? How do I describe this service to them so that they recognize that this is a solution to their problem? So that's the second step. And the third step is, how can I build a very lean version of this concept so I can show it to the customer and see if if they're interested and they're engaged with it. So those are the first three steps. And the third step is, how can I build a very lean version? Obi, can you turn up? Obi, do you mind turning it down? And see if okay. And then the fourth step is optimize the process for optimize your relationship with your customer, and all that is listed in our playbook, but we'll be going in much more detail in the startup school.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, so folks, I guess everyone has heard about Chinedu's LinkedIn. Please feel free to visit his LinkedIn page and download the documents and information that he's mentioning here. Right. Okay. So Chinedu, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go back and talk to about your roots, right? So now you're here. You're doing startup alchemy. You went to Nigeria. You did the private equity, and you're back in the U.S. What are your plans? I mean, how do you see? I mean, one of the things the Diaspora Commission, who's supporting this, is very interested in is engaging the Nigerian diaspora for the development of Nigeria, right? So how do you see yourself and the rest of the diaspora helping out with the development of Nigeria, moving us from where we are through the challenges that we're facing to getting to a point where, people like you, can come out of Nigeria. We don't all have to leave Nigeria to be extremely successful.
This is we live in such a wonderful time, right? There's so wonderful time, right? So just looking at the challenges of Nigeria, right? There isn't one major challenge, right, in the top 5, 10 challenges that we can solve. There's none. But obviously the challenge is organization, right? It's organizing ourselves in a way that allows diasporans, Nigerians, right, to create economic value, right? So that's so I think the way to do that is better organization. Obviously, we've published some a playbook on how to create such an efficient organization. It's also on my LinkedIn page. But I feel like there's an abundance of talent, capital, resources. The only thing that's missing is organization of that talent, all those resources. That's the only thing that's missing. But to do that, vision, right? Clarity. I think it's always going to be an interesting case study to take one major Nigerian problem and see how it can be solved with the right organization of people and resources. So I think we have all the resources, but I think our leaders have to be able to see that there's no challenge they have today that can't be solved. Right? None. Name it. None of it. Right? There's none of it. None of it. Right? Whether it's how to activate economic activity in Enugu or how to build a new there's nothing in Kaduna, or to how to create an efficient transport system in Lagos, right? All those things are the only thing that's missing is an efficient organization that delivers those propositions, right? And for me, what we've done on the beloved organization is a way, let's say, toolkits that we're saying for people who need to organize themselves to achieve a goal. Here is a playbook that allows people to organize themselves. As you know, when you're in a group, especially between borders, it almost feels like you're herding cats, right? Everyone goes around in different directions. But I think if we invested in systems that organized us, right, we will be so much more efficient in solving many of these Nigeria's problems. Think from agriculture, import, export, right, trade, Nollywood, right? There's so much value that's there, but really trust, groups, organizations, information, those are the things that's really holding us back. If Nigeria had better policies about even information itself, it would unlock so much entrepreneurship. What if we knew, and it was totally available, all the imports information from the trade, from the ports. Imagine if we literally knew all the import substitution strategies local entrepreneurs could use, because we knew exactly the amount of goods were imported by category, right? So all this information is already within Nigeria. What's really needed is enough leadership to organize the information in a way that business people, entrepreneurs investors can come together to align around that opportunity. And I'm a big believer in information. So if Nigeria were even to unlock the information that's in ministries, right? Or in cabinet offices, I really opened it up. Business people, entrepreneurs, capitalists will come together in a way that we can't even describe now. So that's like a very simple, practical way for progress to be made on many fronts in Nigeria.
Okay, so how do you think the best way for the diaspora to engage in driving all this and helping get the organization around, policy, information, and everything else?
Yeah, so I think it's do what entrepreneurs should focus on, which is solve a problem for someone. So whether you're building a network of gyms to provide health services in suburban areas in Lagos, or you're building an app that allows for money wiring services, or you're building the Uber of Lagos. I think that's a very practical way. The other one, I think, is also create ecosystems, right? As Nigerians, our networks are important, right? But sometimes it's hard for us to turn those social networks into business networks as well. So I would encourage people who already have close personal ties to see what kind of business that they can do together, right? Businesses, and I think your organization, I think you guys are active in hosting some of those gatherings, but I think building a network of Nigerians who are doing business and seeing how we can come together to, especially when there's a clarity of what the business can solve for Nigerians, I think is a very practical way. Solve a problem for Nigerian. That's my advice. Solve a problem for Nigerian. Okay,
so we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. So just for those on the call, I'll open it up for questions. We've been asking most of the questions that were pre-submitted. Some questions have already come in, so I'll just jump to some of those. So one of the questions is, GigaMate was originally not 100% nonprofit. So what led the decision to make all proceeds go to charity?
So my meat is actually still not 100% doesn't go to charity. My meat keeps 15% of the fees. So we're still a for-profit business, but now most of it goes to charity.
Yes. Okay, sorry, forgot to mention, for those who are not aware, what's GigaMate and what are you doing and how did charity come in, I guess. I forgot to ask you that.
Yeah, so the first company that Love and Magic sort of incubated was a company called initially GigaMeet and now called MindMeet. And the idea behind MindMeet is a platform for people to find knowledge in exchange for donation to a charity. So if somebody wanted to speak to me, for example, about entrepreneurship, they could go on MindMeet and then request a MindMeet with me. We would have a virtual call similar to Zoom, and then I would share my advice, and then they would and then the donation would go to my charity. So that's how MindMeet works now.
Okay. 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 One other interesting question. Not sure how this works out, but someone asked, "How do I start to retool after 50 years?"
Oh, it's a wonderful question, and I don't know who you are, but it's a great question to have. So things are changing in this world. Degrees was. I'm not even sure if degrees will be necessary in 20 years. So we live in an age where things are changing so fast, right? And the way to keep up with that change is to learn. You talk about always grow, always learn. It's very true, right? So there's no such thing as being 50 or being 40 or being 30 or needing to. You should constantly be retooling. You should constantly, because things are moving so fast, right? And there's no field, as I mentioned, AI, for example. Everyone who's thinking about the future should be thinking about AI. AI shouldn't be something that those people do. And so, so the person, who asked that question about retooling is, I would go in, and I think my favorite learning tool is YouTube. As I mentioned, it is my favorite learning thing. So my advice is, pick a topic that you're passionate about, right? Go on YouTube, type it in, and sort it by shortest to longest. Then start with the shortest, right? And what you'll find is that so slowly you'll be able to find an easy way to understand something that now seems difficult, right? So you just keep on expanding your curiosity, right? And because you can't learn something that you're not interested in, right? So find something you're interested in. It could be anything, and just start learning about it, right? And once you start learning about it, all of a sudden you will have so many options, options that you don't think you have now. Because some people are not learning, and whether you're 50 or 40 or 60 or 70, the way to sustain yourself and to continue to have value and relevance in this age of change is to learn. It's to learn. Your organization will not save you. Your job will not save you. Your title will not save you. The thing that will keep value, keep you being valuable to other people, is the rate at which you can learn and the rate at which you can apply your creativity, or especially your business creativity, to see the opportunities that other people can't see. So that's what I would say.
Okay, interesting. So so going back to your your journey, right? What would you consider? What would you think you could have done to speed up the successes in your life? I mean, you've had an impressive run so far, but what are some other things that you think you could have just thrown in there that would have just made this move a lot faster and cleaner?
I think goals are a great way. I think I was too modest in some of my goals early on as a business person, but I think now, if I had to do it again, is because your goal really sometimes has nothing to do with your efforts, right? Much of your bigness of a goal is actually can accelerate progress in a very real way. right? So almost thinking very big from the start, right? I'm not saying that you act very big, you still act in a very precise manner, but having very strong, very, very big goals, right? Would put a certain pressure, not pressure, but like a certain energy. I think that helps move you faster because it's easy sometimes to not coast, but yeah, basically coast, right? Or to feel like you've achieved a certain level of success and you're okay being in that environment for some time. And the bigger you set your goals, the more reminders you get about how there are more opportunities than you're taking advantage of, every day. So.
Okay, so cool. So coming to tail end. So I mean, like you've done all this. You're working on alchemy. Do you have other things in the pipeline? I mean, you've been a product guy, right? And now you're more of in the mentorship, kind of consulting range. But I think most people will be expecting that you're going to come out with a product or something anytime soon. And for people who are interested, or if people have ideas, are you open to people bringing the ideas to you for either mentorship, funding, or any kind of support?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't invest anymore. So for people who are interested in working on the idea, especially if they're early ideas or they're not techie or whatever, I highly recommend that they go to the startupschoolofalchemy.com, which is where they can sign up for the first masterclass. But they could also go onto LinkedIn as well. As I said, download my the playbook for free as well. Those are resources that can help them. So what was your question, actually?
I said, what do you have next? I mean, do you have anything
Oh,
else
okay, next. So this is my passion. This is my passion. So I think this is what I'm interested in, helping people create better, help them take the journey of entrepreneurship. I have an idea and that compels me to pursue it, but it seems very dark. It seems like there's a jungle, right? And I think my passion is to help entrepreneurs use their imagination and then use science and processes to illuminate that path from where they are today to like that potential that they see that's possible. And the only way you can do that is by truly understanding what that process is. And so that's, for me, that's my own personal passion. And I feel like that's the area I can be of most help in this world, really, to other people, at least of now.
Okay, so for someone going through alchemy, they get the understanding of the basics. But does alchemy also provide you an opportunity to improve your network? Maybe leverage your own network as well, or do you and do you also have an opportunity to see something that's pretty promising and then you could put your own muscle behind it? Is that an advantage someone who comes through your process can look forward to having?
Yeah, so the way it works, so let me just go to the fact, right? So it's a 6 weeks, six webinars, but each one of them, I have everyone ask the questions and I'll answer it specifically on the webinar, but you can download it and watch it at any time. Then there'll be 2 Q&A, 1.5 hour Q&A sessions with me as well. So I think anyone who's going through the class will have an abundance of opportunity to go through the questions and for me to answer the questions. So that's one. For companies that go through the program and there's an opportunity to work with them to further their concepts, that might be an opportunity, but I can't say that is something that would happen or even pretend that there's clarity of it being happened. I don't want to even say that because it's not. If it so happens, then it so happens, but it's not part of what we're offering in the school.
Okay, so I think that's it. We've crossed the 1 hour mark, and I know it's pretty late your time. So if there are no other questions, I think we'll just wrap up here. And Chinedu, we thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Let's make sure. And just want to also thank the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission and their chairman, Mrs. Abike Dabiri, who's supporting this series. And for those on the call, our goal is to keep bringing this to you. We plan to make it monthly, bring out diaspora speakers that can come out and share their experiences that we can all learn from, and hopefully build a much better network and then expand our resources and capabilities and understanding of the process and how to be a better Nigerian in the diaspora. So again, Chinedu, I'll say a very big thank you. I know we've been through this for quite a while to get this to this point. So thank you again, and thank you to your team for pulling this off. So everyone on the call. Yes.
Thank you, Obi. Thank you everyone as well for joining and listening to the call, and best of luck with all your wonderful ideas and aspirations for 2020.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And just as a reminder, please visit Chinedu's LinkedIn page. You can find him by searching on LinkedIn. You can download the material for free, and you can also sign up for his Alchemy masterclass. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.